What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Total Takedown, brought to you by PubSportsRadio.com. This is Clint from the Die Hard MMA Podcast, and we are talking about overs and unders. How long will these fights last? UFC 262 edition. We got titles on the line. We've got some big-time fights. We've got some lower-level events that could end in violence. I am loving this card. Let's jump right on into it. Do me a favor. Smash that like button. Show us some appreciation for bringing you the best sports betting content on the net today for free. So first fight of the night, we've got a lightweight fight. Christos Giagos taking on Sean Soriano. And we've got a total here set, unsurprisingly, at 2.5 rounds. Now, we are no longer in the Apex. We are in Texas, baby. So we're going back to the full big cage. Keep that in mind for all of these totals. Total here 2.5, minus 210 to the over, plus 175 to the under. This seems like an under or pass spot in my opinion. Christos Giagos is a grappler, a grinder, a guy who looks to pin his opponents up against the fence and just wear on them, try and get that 15-minute decision. Problem is, he's getting a little long in the tooth. He's getting a little up there in his age. He slows down badly late in the second round, and especially in that third round. Now, Sean Soriano is a guy who we're not entirely certain is UFC caliber. He's got some high-level training partners. He's washed out of the UFC once before, but I do think he may be the better all-round fighter than Giagos. So if anything, he's going to come in here. He's on short notice, filling in for somebody else who dropped off. I think he's going to have a kill or be killed early type of mentality. He's going to know... I'm assuming he doesn't have the gas tank to go 15 minutes with a grinder like this kid. He thinks he can probably catch him in a submission or something along those lines. So the finishing ability is going to come from Sean, potentially Christos Giagos breaking him if he had a bad weight cut or if he isn't prepared to come in here on short notice. Giagos might be able to get some kind of a late finish. So there is a chance for both fighters to potentially get that finish. And I think I would look at the under 2.5 at plus 175 here. No bet for me just because there's a lot of questions. I will be watching this one very closely come face-off time and the weigh-ins on Friday, though. Next up, we got a featherweight fight. Kevin Aguilar taking on Tucker Lutz. We've got a total set at 2.5 once again, almost identical. The over 2.5 minus 210, under 2.5 plus 175. And this is one where I'm the exact opposite. I would think over or pass. So my guy, Kevin, the Angel of Death Aguilar, has some hands. He's got heavy hands. He's got strong boxing, sharp punches, and he's got excellent takedown defense. So he forces his opponents to stand up with him. Tucker Lutz is a guy who blitzes his way in to close that pocket range. But what he wants to do is get his mitts on you. He wants to take you down. He wants to slow you down, press you up against the fence, bully you around the cage, put you on your back. He is a grappler and a grinder, and that's what he looks to do. So if Lutz cannot get the takedown on Aguilar, I almost got to wonder if he won't be a little bit hesitant on the feet to stand and trade and box with a guy like Kevin Aguilar. If that's the case, he keeps his range, he slows the pace down, and I think Aguilar's live for a 15-minute decision. Aguilar is definitely live for a knockout of some sort, but I don't see Lutz knocking him out, and I definitely don't see Lutz submitting somebody like Kevin Aguilar. So I'd be leaning on the over in this spot, a little too chalky for my taste, but that's the only way I could look in that fight. Next up, we got a flyweight match. Gina Mazany taking on Priscilla Cachoeira. It looks like we have got a total here set at 2.5. Like we talk about always, these women's totals are always juiced to the overs. Over 2.5 is minus 245. Under 2.5 plus 205. So we got a nice big number on that under 2.5. And I would be tempted to look that way. The only problem is, I always talk about it, I need both fighters to contribute to my unders cashing. Gina Mazany, potentially chinny. That's how she contributes to this under cashing. She's a grinder. She's a grappler. She's got that nice, nasty front kick. She teep kicked her way to a victory in her last fight out. So we can't underestimate the power that she's got on the feet. She can hurt some people. But Priscilla Cachoeira, she's been nothing but durable in the UFC. She may get out wrestled. She may get outclassed. But she does not like to go down easy. What she does have, though, is vicious power for the women's division on the feet. We've seen Gina Mazany be somebody who just simply does not like to get hit. I can absolutely see Priscilla Cachoeira flurrying on Gina Mazany and getting her put away. I only see the side coming from Cachoeira, though. I only see the finish coming from her side of the fight. I don't know that Gina Mazany's got a path besides maybe a submission, but I really don't see that happening either. She's probably going to more just establish top control and look to grind on her opponent. So I don't know if she can get it done. done. As much as I would say the under at plus 205 may be the side, one more time, this is one of those weird spots where maybe you just take Priscilla by knockout. Maybe you just take Priscilla inside the distance. You get a much better line than the plus 200, and that's probably the way this fight goes under if that's the way that you're leaning. So a total pass from me from a totals perspective, but I definitely would look at the under just because we've seen her be a little bit chinny in the past, and Priscilla hits really, really hard. We're on the preliminary card now. Andrea KGB Lee. Don't know where I got Alexander from. Andrea KGB Lee takes on Antonina Shevchenko. Total here set at 2.5. The over is minus 425. The under is plus 340, and I can't deny that whatsoever. Both these women are strikers. We've got Andrea Lee, who's got some solid grappling on her, decent wrestling. We've got Shevchenko, who can't stop a takedown to save her life. Now, she does have some sweet grappling, some slick submissions, but I think Lee is savvy enough to defend those positions and stay safe from a top position. When they're on the feet, both of them are more volume strikers. They don't really have the power that the men do. I'm not expecting either of these women to get clipped and hurt really badly and put down. So I think this one's going the full 15. I think it's going to the judges' scorecards, but you're not going to catch me laying minus 400 on almost anything. So I'm not going to play this one. Over is definitely the way to go here, though. Middleweight fight, Jordan Wright taking on Jamie Pickett. And we've got two very questionable fighters here in this one, and I love these types of matchups. Total here set at 1.5 rounds. We've got Jordan Wright, who has a 100% finish rate. If he wins a fight, he is finishing said fight. However, he's fought the most questionable level of competition known to man. Jamie Pickett is the exact opposite. This dude is tough. He is gritty. He is durable. He can hang in there and not go down when you would expect him to. But he's got some pop on his hands. So as much as Jamie Pickett doesn't have the defensive holes that I want him to have to play an under, his offense and my question surrounding Jordan Wright's chin definitely helps on the under as well. The only way I could look on this fight is the under 1.5. The problem is it's 1.5, not 2.5. I prefer to play the 2.5s and get that extra round in there. But at the plus 130 currently offered on the under 1.5, that's the way I'd have to look. Over is minus 150, so there is some money coming in on that. People are expecting this fight to last a little bit longer, but I got to tell you, with Jordan Wright, he tries to get in there and push the pace every single time, and when he's fighting a caliber opponent, he pays for it. And I feel like that might be what happens here on Saturday. And if he is fighting somebody who he's capable of beating, he does have some serious offensive power, both in the striking and in the grappling. If he finishes his opponent, he usually gets it done pretty quick too. So I'd be looking at the under 1.5 at plus 130 in that fight. Again, not one that I'm overly excited about betting because it's such a sketcy fight, and either of those guys, you really don't know what they're up to or what they're going to do. Next up, we got a featherweight bout, Lando Groovy Venata taking on Mike Grundy. Now, Grundy is a Commonwealth Games level wrestler, high-level wrestler, but that's all this guy does. He does have a nasty squeeze on him. We saw him get Movsar Evloev in some serious trouble on the ground last time out, so I don't want to count out the fact that he's capable of finishing. He also has seriously heavy hands. If he does clip you on the feet, he can definitely hurt you. The only problem is he's extremely low volume and picks his shots very, very carefully. Someone like Lando Venata, someone who's light on the feet, moves around, likes to stay on the outside, Grundy's going to have a real hard time catching and hitting that man. So maybe a submission, not necessarily seeing a knockout. Lando Venata, on the other hand, extremely flashy, big kicks, lots of speed, lots of power, dropping down a weight class for the first time ever, though, and that gives us some very serious questions. Is it going to affect his gas tank? Is it going to affect his durability? Will the power translate? Those are all big questions for somebody switching weight classes for the very first time. It could hurt, it could help. We just don't know yet. So I would say there's plenty of opportunity for not one but both guys to potentially finish this fight. If Grundy gets Venata on the mat, Venata has a tendency of gassing out, and that submission threat is definitely there. If Grundy cannot get the takedown, then Venata being on the feet for the full 15 minutes, staying on the outside, using those big power kicks, he can take anybody's head off with those things, and especially in round one, being the bigger fighter coming down from 155, he's live there for the knockout. The total set at 2.5. Over is minus 185, under is plus 160, and this would be a spot where I would definitely consider a violence bet. That under 2.5 at plus 165, plus 160, in that ballpark, maybe not a bad bet. That's one that I'll have to put a pin in. Not sure if I'm going to pull the trigger on it myself later on. I like a lot of sides this week. Last week I said that I liked a lot of totals. This week I like more of the sides. So I may not be playing a ton of totals myself this week, but I do think there are some half-decent spots if you feel like rolling the dice a little bit on some violence. The final fight of the preliminary card is Ronaldo Jacare Souza taking on Andre Muniz. Total here set at 2.5. The over is -125. The under is +105. And this is an interesting match because both these guys are wicked on the ground. Jacare is much more wrestling proficient, and Muniz is more than willing to play off of his back Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu style. But Jacare is a world-class Jiu-Jitsu player. I don't know that I see Muniz catching him off of his back. This is not the guy that you're going to throw a triangle up in desperation or snatch an arm because he was positionally unsound. That's not going to happen. Jacare is not going to allow those opportunities. So I think if this is a grappling match, Souza's probably on top, and he's probably just grinding his way to a decision, holding down, being positionally solid on Andre Muniz. If this fight is on the feet, Muniz and Jacare both have power. We question Jacare's chin just a little bit coming off the knockout loss to Holland, and because of his age, and we don't really know a ton about Muniz, but his only losses in his career have been by knockout, so there's a chance he's a bit chinny as well. I can see the argument for this fight going under, but I think Jacare needing to defend his position here in the UFC, needing to make sure that he gets that win and people don't forget about him, I think he probably is looking to just grind away a decision here, and I think he's more than capable of doing that against a younger guy who's willing to take that step backwards, who's willing to play on the ground off of his back, and because of that, I think the over is probably the way to look here. We got a -125 to go over, and I feel like that's a pretty fair number for this one. Both guys are more than capable of finishing, but I can absolutely see this one being a bit of a grinder and a bit of a slow-paced fight lasting the full 15. Next up, we have got the main card, Shane Burgos, Hurricane Shane, taking on Edson Barboza. What a fight this one is. If there was ever a fight to bet on violence, this is the one to do it. Total set at 2.5, -175 to the over. And we've got +115 to the under. I'm just going to tell you right now, that's violence all day. You go under 2.5 at +155. That is a fantastic spot. The way these two guys rip at people, the leg kicks, the body kicks of Edson Barboza, the fast hands, the volume of Shane Burgos, the fact that Shane refuses to take a step backwards and stays in his opponent's face constantly, those are all things that are going to either cause you to break or break your opponent. Those are the only options here. So either Barboza is going to get overwhelmed by Shane coming right down the pipe at him, or Burgos is going to walk his way right into a spinning head kick. So I think somebody in this fight is going down. The worst thing about this for me, though, is both guys have insane levels of durability and are more than willing to go to war and have been in these 15-minute wars before, and they just don't quit. So the fact that they are both willing and able to take that life-changing beating, and we've seen it happen before, and they're coming back here again looking for a second helping, I can't necessarily count on either of them to fall. I do think Shane Burgos probably breaks Edson Barboza, and I do think that we've seen Edson Barboza break people with those kicks before, and that's on the table here as well. So the value is definitely on the under 2.5, especially getting a plus number, +155, sounds fair enough to me. I see kind of a late second round, maybe an early third round stoppage when these guys have just put it all on the table and given everything they've got. One of them will run dry. One of them will have not enough left to give at that stage. So I'd say under 2.5 is the way to go on that spot. Women's flyweight fight, Katlyn Chookagian taking on Viviane Araújo. This one kind of writes itself, folks. Total here is over 2.5, -440. Under 2.5 is +350. And again, it kind of writes itself. It's women's MMA. We're not dealing with a lot of finishing power in general, especially in a Katlyn Chookagian fight. You're not dealing with a lot of finishing power. Viviane Araújo, maybe questionable gas tank. I think she's put those problems behind her, and if that's the case, there's not much opportunity for Katlyn Chookagian to finish her on the mat. Viviane's a much better wrestler than Chookagian is. Chookagian is a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. I don't know that I see a submission coming around here, and even though we have seen Katlyn Chookagian put down, it was from one of the biggest power punchers in the division. Araújo hits hard. I don't know if she hits that hard. This one's going to go all 15. I'm kind of expecting Araújo by decision, mixing in the grappling. Definitely not one that I'm planning on betting from a totals perspective. Bantamweight fight, Matt Danger Schnell taking on Rogério Bontorin. Now, this is the one, folks. This is the one that I circled from day one as soon as I heard about this fight, and I'm definitely looking at the violence. Total here is 2.5. Over 2.5 is minus 120. Under 2.5 is plus 100, and that makes me really sad because it opened up at plus 150, and I have not yet been able to get my mitts on it. So the value that I was looking for is long gone, but I'm still looking at the under 2.5, even at an even money plus 100 type of situation, because what we have is two guys that are going to force the action on one another. Matt Schnell is a wicked finisher. He's got nasty Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's got fast, accurate hands. He's going to have a reach advantage here. And he's taking on Bontorin, a guy that just does not sit back. Bontorin pushes the action. He's going to get in his face. He's going to look for level changes, takedowns, grappling. And then he wings big punches John Lineker style when he's in striking distance. This kid has bombs in his hands, and he uses that to close the distance and get his opponents to the floor. Once on the floor, he gets to the back extremely quickly and looks for submissions from pretty much every position. That's going to force scrambles out of Matt Schnell. Somebody's going to get caught and subbed, or somebody's going to get knocked out in this fight. On top of that, Rogério Bontorin is coming back to us from a layoff of just 2 months after getting badly knocked out by Kai Kara France. Your brain needs more time to heal than that, folks. He is definitely at risk here of getting clipped and getting knocked out again. But if he doesn't get knocked out, then Matt Schnell is definitely at risk getting taken down, getting submitted, or pounded on himself. So I like the violence here. Under 2.5 at plus 100, that'd be the way that I'm looking, and that's a bet I'm potentially adding to my card personally. Co-main event, lightweight fight, Tony Ferguson taking on Beneil Dariush. We've got a total here set at 2.5 rounds. Over is minus 180. Under 2.5 is plus 158. Plus 145, somewhere in that ballpark. Plus 155 I see floating around out there. And, this one's tough. So I'm kind of leaning towards the over. I kind of think that Beneil Dariush takes the game plan that Charles Oliveira put out for Tony Ferguson and grapples him, wrestles him, looks to stay heavy on top, grind him down to a pulp, use that wrestling advantage, and smother Tony for 15 minutes. However, that's easier said than done. We've also seen Beneil Dariush's legs give out. We've seen him get clipped and rocked on the feet before. Tony Ferguson's got a new boxing coach. We've seen him dice people up with elbows and get the doctor stoppage. He's a weird, awkward submission fighter from the ground, can hit chokes from very strange positions. So even though Dariush is a guy that you wouldn't expect to see get caught in a submission, Tony Ferguson's the kind of guy that will open up that door and catch you with something that you haven't seen coming before. So there's a ton of finishing power on both sides of this fight. So I really don't like it from a totals perspective because the value is definitely on the under, but the big looming question of whether or not Tony Ferguson is shot is right here, because I could see him turn that clock back. I could see him step out there and make Dariush look stupid for stepping in the cage with him and snatching up his neck on a takedown entry or something along those lines. I can also see Tony Ferguson being completely shot, shop-worn, damaged, and have Beneil Dariush knock his block off with one of those big shots, because I think Dariush has a power advantage here as well. There's a lot of ways this fight can go, and because of that, I'm almost entirely passing on it. I don't want to play this total, but I gotta say the value is on the under. Main event time, Charles Oliveira taking on Michael Chandler. Two big-time finishers. Michael Chandler, a strong, stocky, little powerful dude, dynamite in his hands, excellent wrestler, training with Kamaru Usman. Charles Oliveira, submission specialist that rounded out his Muay Thai game. Now he's added some wrestling wrinkles to it as well. Really filled out well at 155. Just huge, absolutely massive in there come fight night. Total here set at 2.5. We got a total 2.5. Over is plus 135. Under is minus 155. And I got to look under. This is one that I don't think is going to last very long, because one of these guys is going to force a scramble and one of these guys is going to get tired. We've got Charles Oliveira, who's got that BJJ game. I think Michael Chandler probably out-wrestles him to begin with, and Oliveira has to play off his back. Personally, think Oliveira is live to get broken in this fight when he has to be the nail and is no longer allowed to be the hammer. I think Chandler can clip him and KO him, ground and pound, TKO, stop him. But if Chandler makes any kind of mistake, if Chandler gets tired, if he slows, if he slips up even once, we saw, especially in the Kevin Lee fight, Charles Oliveira really only needs one opportunity. This guy's submission game is so nasty that if you give him just one chance to finish the fight, he will do it. So because of that, there is an absolute threat on both sides of this fight. Now, minus 155 is getting a little pricey for me. I don't know that I necessarily want to lay that particular price tag. If it was closer to even money, or if it was a minus 130, something along those lines, I'd be a lot more intrigued. It's down to minus 182 at some places, so just ridiculous chalk on this under 2.5, and because of that, it kind of makes me want to stay away. You've got the alternate totals here on this one, 1.5 rounds. Over is minus 155. Under is plus 125. I would lean on the over in that spot. I don't know that this is necessarily going to be a one-round fight. I think it probably ends in the second or the third, and I would look over there. But again, you don't really want to lay that kind of price tag on two guys that have this level of power. And the 3.5, if we want to talk about it, if you're thinking over, if you think this thing grinds away and it's a war between these two men, then you're getting a nice juicy plus 180 on the over 3.5 alternate total. If you want to parlay it or lay the chalk, you got a minus 240, minus 250 on the under 3.5, and I definitely think that one hits because you're getting about 2 minutes and 30 seconds into the fourth round, and I don't see this fight lasting that long. I think it's a 3-round fight, maybe finishes in the second. That's Total Madness, folks. That's not Total Madness. That's the Total Takedown. That's Habit, my bad. Total Takedown brought to you by PubSportsRadio.com. Do me a favor, smash that like button. Good luck on all your degenerate action, and we will see you Saturday. Let's roll.